Hey man, welcome back to Todd's House of Speed. And yes, this is how some kids rolled in the 1960s. If you were blessed enough, not lucky, because I don't believe in luck, if you had a bike like this, man, it's like I had a blown pro street car. So I'm going to talk about bicycles, hot rods, muscle cars, and Harley-Davidson, and what they have to do with what I'm sitting on, okay? When you went out to ride, this is how you went. You had sneakers, jeans, maybe not even jeans, just short, no shirt, whatever, no helmet, whatever. And this was your adventure machine. We're going to talk about the history of this and the impact that this had, not only on the culture, but hot rods, muscle cars, and Harley-Davidson had on creating one of these. All right? So stick around. All right, so before we can talk about that bike that I was on, before we get into it, we have to actually go back farther in history. And so, what am I on? So, we're going to go back in the 50s, all right? I was born in the 50s, but like late 50s. Anyway, give you all an idea. And you can see I put my shirt back on because nobody wants to see that. So anyway, the whole idea is, if you were a kid and you were blessed, you might have a ride that looks like this in the 50s. So what does this mean? Like if you're looking, this is actually this is not a vintage bike, this is a vintage look. It's kind of like a resto mod, all right? And so a bike like this, very stylish, it's a cruiser, white wall tires, headlight, kind of an imitation Springer front end. So if you had something like this from Schwinn, and there was like probably a dozen bike makers. If you were a kid and had one of these, had like a 20-inch, be the 20-inch wheels or whatever, it would be like a 58 Super Sport Impala with a 348. I mean, that was really cool. Or maybe even a 57 Chevy, maybe a year earlier. But the idea, this was the style, man. And just when you think it couldn't get any better than this, it did. All right, so this bike is not a 50s, it's a 50 styles. Like I say, it's a resto mod, just if anybody out there is curious. So this is the company that makes these, it's called Electra. And they are really beautifully made. And the bikes in the 50s, just like an Impala, they were all mild steel. And when you start adding like, you know, tubes, maybe less for strength and maybe more for design, aesthetics. They had steel fenders, the rims were steel. That's just how they made them. And like an Impala, big block Impala, they weighed like 2 tons. I mean, I'm just being, you know, that's just kind of what, probably if you were a little kid and you had to, you know, pedaling one of these around, you look cool, but you was going to definitely build some leg muscles, I promise you. But these were cool, man. These, and I think they're still cool. So again, this would have been this particular style. I think Electra's still in business, and they make similar bikes, but that's what this is. And my wife has a matching cruiser, and it just reminds me of a time where I just love the look like a 57 Chevy, like a resto mod. And the resto mod part is this bike is all aluminum, okay, or most all aluminum. So the frame, everything is all machine TIG welded. The forks are actually steel. The rims are aluminum, the hub's aluminum, the fenders are aluminum. So even though this looks heavy, it's really not like those vintage bikes from the 50s. So you have, the great part about it is, to me, there's a lot of style. These bikes are beautifully made, in my opinion. They are not, you won't find these at Walmart or, you know, or the host of the other big box stores or online. This is, I would call, maybe not a premium bike maker, but certainly not one of those. They're really well made. We love them. We enjoy, we get a lot of comments when we go because it's reminiscent of a 50s, just like driving a 57 Chevy. So I just thought to throw that in. All right, Electra bikes, yay. All right, so we're going to illustrate the differences of really 40s and 50s bikes. So come on over here. So again, you saw this is my bike, and then this is my wife's bike, and both from Electra, but they both are of a 50s cruiser style, and they're beautifully made. And so again, if you were a kid in the 50s, 40s and 50s, and you had one of these, you were pretty stylish, just like a 57 Chevy. So let's go over here and show you just what a few years difference makes. And then there were these, okay? So 40s and 50s are those bikes, beautifully done, just like a 57 Chevy. And all of a sudden, in 1963, this came on the scene. Look how different that is. I mean, there's more comparison. Now, this is not the original manufacturer. This is a copy, and I'll talk about this bike a little bit later on in the video. But look at the difference. Even all the way up to even probably 61, these were the styles. And then all of a sudden, literally in 1963, these come on the scene, and look at the difference. So here's the question: what influence, what happened to go from that to something so radically different? So you can see it's so much smaller, more compact. Some people call these ape hangers. The banana seat, I mean, it's like, it literally is a world apart, and there's definitely a reason why. And I'm going to show you the influence of the impact, how it went from this to this in literally just a couple of years, okay? Y'all stick with me. All right, so I'm going to show you all what was the influence. Again, I'm going to draw it, and then I'm going to show you some actual pictures of it, okay? My 5-year-old drawing, guys and gals. All right, I know that probably looks terrible, but anyway, so what do you think that is? It's a chopper. Harley-Davidson, mainly, longer front ends, stripped down, a banana style seat. It wasn't really a banana, but also Triumphs, BSAs. There were some people that actually cut those things up, man. They were British bikes, by the way, if y'all didn't know. Back then, they were very popular. And so what did they do? They basically stripped them down. That was like hot rodding, but it was really, and that's the part where Harley-Davidson mainly came in. So when you say, well, so how did we get from that to there? So kids out on the West Coast. So I did a lot of research on this. And I mean, choppers were pretty much everywhere, but especially I think in California, because the weather was so moderate, and there was a lot of fabricators and, you know, I guess a lot of talent, whatever it was. I'm attributing to the weather is Harley-Davidson. They were choppers, man. And I mean, they didn't have to have a long front end, but it was a very racy style. So kids were looking at adults riding choppers, and they didn't want this anymore. And as a matter of fact, this wasn't even manufactured yet. So how do you make one of these to look like a 60s chopper, okay? Well, you copy it. And I'll put some pictures up of an actually like couple of pan heads, and which were period corrected time. So if you were a kid, you went to your, you know, mom and dad's garage or shed or whatever, and maybe you had a buddy that, you know, his dad had some more than just basic tools, and you maybe chop the fender off. You might do something else, but what about the seat? So believe it or not, this seat, this is called a banana seat, but there was a manufacturer starting in late 59, early 60s, and the manufacturer was called Persons, Person. And they sold, and all they made was, they made an aftermarket seat, and they called it a solo seat. And actually, I take that back. I think it was a Polo, P-O-L. Anyway, I'm going to show you the picture. So I have some original ads. Here's the ad showing the seat installed on a cruiser bike. Here's an actual seat and sissy bar kit. Look at that thing. And look at the collection of these, some in the original boxes. Wow. If you're a kid and you got a bike like this and you start stripping it down and cutting the fenders, well, how do you get to something like a 60s chopper? Well, you need a cool seat. So Persons made the seat, and you could buy a seat like this, and of course you had to have a sissy bar to support it, and guess where it went? So you took this seat off, and then that seat bolted to the frame, the post right here, and then you had the sissy bar to support it. That, everybody, that literally was the first part, was actually Persons seat. And man, they're out of business now. But Persons, you could get all kinds of seats. So, I mean, bicycle accessories, even for these, in the 50s were a big thing. So it was another extension of modernizing your bicycle, or, accessorizing or whatever. But Persons seat was the key. So now you took one of these bikes, you put a Persons seat on it, and then, well, you're about halfway there to something like this with the long seat, sissy bar, and then, some hand fabrication. So here's the thing. So we're building the recipe, and we're setting it up for 1963, when a bike just like this debuted. And the interesting thing is, so these are typically called ape hangers. So aftermarket motorcycle handlebars, even in the 50s, late 50s, early 60s, there were a lot of manufacturers in motorcycle aftermarket parts. And the interesting thing is, Harley-Davidson handlebars are inch diameter, but the British bikes, Triumph, BSA, and a few others that people were chopping up at the time to make them like this, okay? It wasn't limited just to Harley-Davidson, although it was mostly influenced, is the bars on British bikes were 7/8. I'm talking about the diameter. And bicycle handlebars are 7/8 for the most part. So what I don't know, maybe somebody knows this, but this is the other missing part, is there were no ape hanger bars for bicycles because the whole movement hadn't even started yet. So my theory is kids either got 7/8 bars off that were intended for a Triumph or a BSA motorcycle, or maybe they had a buddy that could weld, a kid buddy, or maybe their dad or somebody. But somehow the ape hangers, wherever they came from, this was the style. This was the whole style that kids wanted, because it was different, and they wanted their bicycles to look just like the choppers in the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s. So the key is, the Persons seat was the key, but what I don't know is, I'm speculating, is the bars, they either made them, took multiple bike handlebars, or they pirated them off of British bikes, aftermarket bars, and fitted them on. Either way, that was the two key ingredients. So all this happened almost kind of overnight through my research. And so there was a Schwinn dealer in California that went to their yearly dealers meeting with Schwinn Corporate. And he was talking about, I forgot the guy's name, but I'll try to see if I can dig it up. But the Schwinn dealer noticed wherever he had his bike shop, I don't know if it was on the boardwalk near the ocean or whatever, but he noticed, he saw the kids riding around on bikes like this, but with the fenders chopped. They took the white wall tires off, put black walls on. They had a Persons seat, and then they had some type of ape hanger handlebar. And the kids were going crazy over them. And they essentially, and this is what I think is beautiful, even, I say little kids, but adolescents, you know, they were cutting their bikes up, man, just like an adult, and they were making them the style that they wanted to make. They were emulating these, they wanted it something like this, but they were done with this style, and they wanted to look just like that. And that's literally how this style started. So in '61, this guy, they went to corporate to the annual meeting of all the dealers, and he was saying, you won't believe what's happening out where I am in California. He says, kids are cutting these bikes up and they're adding these seats and they're putting ape hanger bars. And he said, the other kids are going crazy. And he said, they come into my store, Schwinn dealer, wanted to know, does Schwinn have a bike like that? And of course they didn't. But he said it was incredible. He said kids were coming there, and that's literally overnight. It went from like this, the cruiser style, which all of a sudden, almost like overnight, became as old as yesterday's news. And this, or at least something more like this, that was what the kids wanted, man. That was the thing in the early '60s. So it was so much so that Schwinn corporate was convinced that that was the direction. So they sent a couple of people out there, and they saw these kids' bicycle that essentially they built or they had chopped up, and talked to a couple of kids, and they knew they had, if they could make something like this, they'd have a hit on their hand. And I'm going to tell you, they were absolutely right. They didn't even know how big this particular style of bike was going to come, okay? So, in 1963, Schwinn, so just a few years later, this is essentially the style of bike that Schwinn came up with. And I'm going to show you a picture. I've got a few pictures I'm going to post with some narration on a '63 Schwinn. And here it is in all its glory, 1963 Stingray. So it looked just like this, coaster brake, if you want to call it ape hanger bars, but it was a production bike. And if you all notice something, that's what else happened in 1963. Okay? I'm going to show you. Y'all tracking with me? Okay, stick with me. Guess what else happened in 1963 that was a milestone for Chevrolet? Anybody, if you haven't already guessed it? Well, yeah, there we go. The Corvette Stingray, also in 1963. So if you don't know Corvettes, the first generation from in the pre-production, like late 54, early 55, basically was using nickel and dime brakes. The first year or two, it had the 6-cylinder. I mean, yes, they made a lot of headway, but in 1963, that was the second generation of the Corvette, had independent suspension, big disc brakes, split window. It was a 1 year only. I mean, I could just go on and on. I mean, that thing, the Corvette Stingray, was miles ahead of the previous generation. So you see what's happening right here, both in 1963. And don't y'all think it's interesting that Schwinn gave their bikes that look just like this the same name, Stingray? I mean, how cool is that? I mean, if you were a kid and the bike was called Stingray, and then you see this, Corvette Stingray, I mean, do you see the tie-in? So here's what I don't know. That actually happened, and I don't know if GM ever had a problem or who came up with the Stingray first, but they both hit in 1963. Corvette Stingray, Schwinn Sting-Ray bike. And to my knowledge, General Motors or Chevrolet never did anything with the trademark as far as the name to Schwinn, as far as I know, because the Stingray name stuck for years. So that is where literally the turning point for both Corvette and Schwinn bicycles was in 1963. So I'm going to post some pictures and I'll do a little narration of this. And that's how essentially we went from this to that in almost overnight, and it was through person seat, and it all started with Harley-Davidson. All right? So I'm going to post you some pictures. I'm going to post some pictures and do some narration. All right? Stick with me. Okay, so back with our 63. Look at the seat and the sissy bar. Look almost exactly like a person seat. I mean, especially, it's kind of flat on top. It's very stylish, but notice the similarities. So I don't know if they made their own seat or used a person's seat for the first year, but it sure looks exactly the same. Also note that there's no fenders on it. It's just very basic, but the color keyed handlebar grips, white to match the seat. Awesome. Okay, now let's go to the 64. So this is a 64 Stingray, and there's a lot of changes like right away that you see. So first of all, it has fenders, and then the rear fender's a ducktail like a chopper. Definitely Harley-Davidson chopper influence, aftermarket fenders that are curled up at the rear. And then the front fender is like a shorty but rolled back just like a chopper. And look at the seat and the sissy bar. So again, this is a 64, and just in that 1 year you already see some like influences of being, if you want to call it, wilder or more flair. And but you can, especially the seat, you can see where it kind of curls up, and the sissy bar extends over top of the seat just like a chopper. All right, so Schwinn launches the Stingray 1963. I don't know specifically which month. I can't find accurate data. But anyway, they launch it. I'm going to just assume it's in the spring, but I'm not sure. I'm just going to guesstimate. So they launch it, and they bet big on just how many of these things are going to sell. So they have to line up orders for which I'm pretty sure the person seat. They have to line up, pretty much everything, tooling, and I'll tell you how many they sold initially. So you have all this stuff lined up, and Schwinn has told their dealers, like, these are going to be like, sell like hotcakes. So they encourage their dealers to put in a large order. Now, this is what I don't know. I think there were several different colors in 63. I'm sure it's there somewhere, but the ad is showing red, of course, Stingray, and then the red bike in the picture, the 63. So guess how many about the first month they sold? I'm gonna show you. First month. Anybody out there take a guess? I'm gonna tell you. About 0. Now, they may have actually sold a couple, I don't know. But man, initially, they had all this anticipation, and it was like nothing. So what was going on? So you had all, basically all this stuff. Well, people didn't know what they were. Just remember that, these bikes were aimed at kids, around 6 years old to maybe 11, 12 maybe, but that was their target audience, 6 to 11 years old. And those kids don't have money to go. So it's their parents that are buying the bikes. Well, they walk in, and maybe a lot of times without their kids, because maybe they're going to buy it as a birthday present. Of course, the kid's not going to know about it. Maybe it's something for Christmas, or whatever the reason is, but it's a surprise. And that's my research, that initially, of course, the parents are buying it, but the kids aren't like all tagging along all at the same time. Like almost nothing. So then you have the dealers that have like stocked up on all these bikes, all this anticipation, and like initially it looks like it's a flop because nobody's buying them. The parents don't understand what it is. It doesn't look like, of course it doesn't look like anything that they've seen. So they don't buy it. And here's the other thing is, they weren't cheap. So you'll see the ad that I posted. They were priced, the retail price was $49 and maybe some change. I don't know, depending upon who you are, but it's $49. So now, again, this is in 1963. So what does that equate? And this is the other part of the situation or the sales thing. So, okay, $49 doesn't sound like a lot today. Remember, it's 1963. Okay, that's like a pretty long time ago. So I did the math, and this is what a $49 bike would cost today. $490, just add a zero. And that's a real number. So, you know, if you're shopping for a bike today for your kids, and one of these, and I don't know what those bikes, I say I'm pointing, but the cruiser bikes, I don't know if they were that far out of line, but just remember, folks, these were not cheap bicycles. Schwinn, and maybe a few others, built some really quality, they really built quality, man, and then quality costs. But when you think about it, when you go out, if you're going to buy your kid a bike today, and that bike is like $490 in today's dollars, and you don't even know, as a parent, you don't even know what this thing is. It's like you just walk right by it. You just walk by, and then you're just going to look at something maybe cheaper. So I don't know, this is what I don't know. Maybe some other people can comment. I don't know where the price point, I think, was fairly premium because initially 63 didn't have fenders or anything. So they didn't get it, so to speak. So Schwinn started stepping up their advertising, and I don't know if almost marketing, instead of the parents directly to the kids, there was a change in marketing or maybe a reshifting in focus. Okay, we know the first month, okay, it maybe not have been zero, but it was looking like a sales flop big time until they shifted their focus. And it would have been in like, and I actually remember seeing them, like if you were in Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, literally marketing the bikes directly to kids. Now, I don't think Schwinn had any deals with Sears or any other retailers at the time. So I think these could only be bought at Schwinn dealers. So that was kind of another challenge initially. But all of a sudden, when kids realized, when they saw in magazines, that were them or their parents had, but certainly marketed to kids, however you want to say it, they got the word out, and the kids, just like on the West Coast, everybody wanted one. All of a sudden, man, when kids saw it, like across the rest of the United States, oh, they had to have one. So it went from the sales in 63, and we're just going to call it zero. Guess how many they sold in the first year? I'll give you some like Jeopardy music or whatever. I mean, it wasn't in millions. Now, just again, this is like the first year. Guess how many they sold? I'm gonna tell you. $450, $4,500, 45,000 bikes, and it went from zero within, I don't know, from my research says in a few months, so that could be 3 months, 4 months, they went from zero sales to 45,000 units. So here's the interesting thing. Schwinn anticipated a great demand, and they had planned for as much as this. But here's where the thing that's going to come in, it hits a wall. It's not demand. Every month that goes by, the sales are increasing, and they can't even get them to the dealers fast enough. And all of a sudden, they hit a wall in 63, and I don't know at what point, and they couldn't sell anymore. They literally ran out. But what did they run out of? What affected that? The tires. So whoever was supplying, and somebody smarter than me or is more geeked out than me on the tires, whoever they contracted with, Schwinn, for these tires, the manufacturer ran out. I mean, they couldn't even, of the tires. So Schwinn wasn't making the tires, somebody's making it for them. or at least they were buying the tires, which is very typical. I mean, I know Firestone made bicycle tires, Goodyear made bicycle tires, so whoever they contracted with, they ran out of tires. And they had bikes but no tires. Is that the craziest thing you've ever seen or heard of maybe? Okay, maybe not, but literally it just like here's your sails and all of a sudden whoosh, and then you hit a wall because your supplier is out of tires. They can't give you any more tires. You're like, and so I don't know how they addressed it, but they definitely hit a wall, and I'm sure that some other stuff trickled out, and Schwinn probably figured out pretty quickly, we got to get a different supplier. And so whatever they did, they hit a wall, and then that was it. They went from nothing to 45,000, and then there were no more. So along the way, because these started selling so quickly, as you'll see in 1964, they started to offer an option. And this is where the fenders come in. And you'll see like the ducktail fenders. And I think that was it. And then they called it the Deluxe. So towards the end of 63, I guess they were able to get tires, but I mean, just, small. And they actually added a model, more money. I don't know how much more money, but it was the Deluxe. And then in 64, the picture I showed you, the next option from that was the Super Deluxe package. And I'm not quite sure what was past that. I know it's all geeky stuff, but I think it's interesting. You all find it interesting. So bare bones, run out of tires, and then they see what's happening, an explosion, so they add like a premium package, a deluxe package, and then in 64, the Super Deluxe. All right? Okay, so now we are into 65, and they are really stepping up their game. On this bike, you can see now you can get a Springer front end. That's optional. And the slick, and they spelled it capital S-L-I-K. So kind of a play on words, from an actual slick. And they coined these words specific to them. And kids knew what was going on. Even little kids like, okay, that's a cool spelling. So they had the slick rear tire, and you can see it in the picture, and it was like a drag slick, man. I remember those. And for the first time, you could get 2-speed, so you kind of get like a low and a mid, and still in the coaster brake, there was no shifter. And then you could also get a 3-speed. So what I don't know, and I can't find any pictures of it. I don't think the stick shifter, that's going to come like a car. That's going to come a little bit later, maybe I think in 66 or so. But anyway, so you can see it's really progressing. It's really starting to look like, well, a chopper, Springer front end, slick tire, like a dragster or a drag bike. And for the first time, get multiple speeds, 2 and 3 speed hub with a coaster brake. So here's where the advertising marketing tie-in for, as I said, muscle cars, Schwinn very shrewdly ties in with the beginning of the muscle car era, certainly with the Corvette. They name it the Stingray, come out in 63, and immediately in their advertising, especially when they're advertising to the kids, really, in those publications, is the bike with the sports car look. And then the other part of that was handles like a sports car. That's a Jag Series 1 XKE coupe in the background. And you look at this compared to the cruiser bikes. Essentially it's a Corvette, it's a sports car. So the tie-in in 63, calling the Stingray, and then a lot of the early ads, they show kids with cars in the background, muscle cars, and you have the advent in 1964, the GTO. And the muscle car era was really already starting with like 409 Impalas, Max Wedge Mopars, Fords, but these were all full-size cars again, and Pontiac with the Super Duty. So, but all those were, the drag racing and big cars. But in 64, the GTO hits, and then that thing takes off. And so Schwinn very wisely ties in the bikes with the muscle car era. Now here's the thing I want to talk about is what happened to Harley-Davidson. I mean, if the bobber and the chopper was the influence for all of this to begin with, what happened? Well, man, back then, motorcycling, period, had pretty much a bad name, a society to look down, and whether, I don't care what you were riding, the sport had a negative impact, well, really viewed negatively, big time, and maybe people just didn't understand or whatever, but it's really a delineation where Harley in the early 60s were showing, like clean cut people in a hat riding their dresser or, whatever, motoring around with their girlfriend. It was all like very proper. And then the other part is nobody ever showed was like the choppers, man, the movement where, people were chopping these bikes up and they were drag racing them. They were like street racing and they stripped them down. And that whole part of Harley-Davidson or Harley-Davidson bikes, I mean, Harley-Davidson did not want anything to do with that. And I mean, it went on for years. Harley-Davidson just like, yeah, we're not even promoting that because motorcycling already had a bad image for whatever. And yeah, okay, there might have been some thugs and some 1%ers and gangs or whatever, but most of the time they just associated all motorcycles. So it's fascinating to me in many ways that the choppers and the bobbers with the short front end, like a Frisco style, San Francisco, is what inspired this. And man, they left all that, but I mean, Harley-Davidson wasn't even mentioned. I mean, there was no pictures, there was nothing, because overall it was viewed like in a really negative way. So in order to be positive, because again, these are marketed to kids, is we're going to align it with cars because the muscle car era was literally just starting. I mean, just starting as we know it. And then Schwinn wisely decided to ride that, and you'll see as the years progress, the colors get wilder. I mean, they were wild before Mopar did it in the late 60s with the Roadrunner and all those crazy colors and the Cuda and all that. I mean, Schwinn was doing it years before. So, and you'll watch, and I'll show you pictures where every year it gets a little wilder, just like muscle cars get wilder as each year progresses. All right, stick with me. Okay, now we're into 66 and already see some changes. I think I am not certain about this, but the bars look higher. I am pretty sure the bars got higher than the original bike. And the biggest thing is like right in your face is the stick shift, and initially a 3-speed for 66, and it's still hub, so meaning it's not a derailleur, it's and I hope I said that right, so it's a 3-speed integral to the hub, and with that there's no coaster brake, and you can see the addition of front and rear brakes, and again you could get a Springer front end. There was all kinds of stuff, but so in 66 it's the first year of the stick shift and brakes up on the handlebars, just like a motorcycle. That thing is getting cooler by the minute. Check out the color too. Okay, now so here comes 67, and the first thing you probably notice, as I said back in for the 66 models, but it's my understanding that in 67 the handlebars definitely changed, and they called them Schwinn fastback bars. And you can see on the kid on the right, it's definitely more pronounced, more like almost like a wing of a bird, lack of a better thing, however you all want to say it, but definitely more pronounced than the earlier years. Some new colors and a few other things that are very subtle, but look at those two picks, man. It doesn't get any cooler than that. All right, now, so we're into 1967. Actually, we're going to kind of take you through towards the end. So just think, how many of these things do you all out there think that Schwinn sold from 63 to the end of 67? So it depends upon, who you're consulting with or the research or whatever, but try 2 million. 2 million of these things in that amount of time by the end of 67. Some people say it was more or less. Some people say it's in the 68. Anyway, so that's what I found. And here's the interesting thing is not only were they selling bikes, but they had developed a whole line of aftermarket, like from Schwinn, like different handlebars. As a matter of fact, there's through my research in 67, they had what they called, I think it was butterfly handlebars that you could purchase. And those things came up and then came back and then curled in. And I'll try to have a picture of them. They sold headlights, both battery powered and generator powered. The generator would run off the tire as you go down the road. They had the speedometers. They had different colored hand grips. They had different pedals. They had different tires. They had tires with like white lettering, you know, like a performance tire, at least back then. And I could just go on and on. Streamers coming here. They had sissy bars, man, that came back here, like really high, like a chopper, motorcycle. I mean, it was endless. And there's a lot of profit in that stuff. So they were killing it selling these. And then I don't know how much money they made off all the accessories, but I'm going to tell you it was a lot. Okay, so they're just killing it. Schwinn is like owns the market. I mean, they own the kids' market, there's no question. So what are the other bike manufacturers doing at the time? One is like, well, they're all like scrambling to catch up. So two of the manufacturers were Huffy and Murray. And basically they supplied bikes under different names for like Sears and that's nothing new, by the way, and other big department store chains, and they put their name on it. But man, I mean, you know, they all sat up and took notice. So by 65, man, they were already copying and selling, and that's where this comes in. So just hold on to your hats because, man, just when you think these companies are catching up, okay, the other companies with Schwinn is already getting ready to flip the script into 1968, okay? And 68 is going to be like Stingray version 2.0 and is going to once again leave the other manufacturers bike. It's just going to blow your mind. And in 1968, that's the point where there's a direct tie-in with muscle cars, with pictures, drag racing and car culture, muscle car culture. It's direct from 68 on, man. It's like everything is tied into that like this. And the sales are just continue to climb, all right? So that's where this bike comes in. This is one of the copies, and I think this is probably maybe mid to late 60s, I'm guessing, because I don't know what the serial number translates to. Anyway. So this bike was made by a company called Western Auto, and they were like kind of like an auto parts store, but like half kids store. I mean, man, like Western Auto sold like half of it was kids bicycles, adult bicycles, mini bikes, go-karts, and accessories for all of that stuff. I mean, that was most of the stores like in this area. There were a couple. About half the store, it was like a kids Summit Racing or Jegs. And it was dedicated to everything like with wheels and kids. I mean, you know, that's just what, it was awesome, by the way, walking into that. And then the other half was auto parts, and it was like battery starters, alternators, and stuff like that. So anyway, Western Auto, look for another, one of my future videos where I kind of do a little bit of a thing about a little bit of a feature on Western Auto and something else that I have. And they were pretty cool, man, when you were a kid. There was nothing like it, all right? So we'll get to this and we'll explain this. So down here you can see the Astro Flyer, and then I don't know if you can, I think you can pick it up. You see where the pedals are, have the green stripes, kind of teal. This thing is kind of teal looking. And you've got the top bar here that mimics kind of like a gas tank on the motorcycle. And we're going to pull back, and you can see the front fender is like rolled back, like chopped. And this doesn't have a ducktail fender, but it's still chopped at the back. Got a sissy bar, black seat. And just kind of come around here. And interestingly enough, I bought this thing at a yard sale and in a little town called Strasbourg.
That's my shop foreman in the background. And back then, I don't know if you all can see it. It's kind of hard to see. There's a town near there we go, Woodstock. That's Woodstock, Virginia, folks. And then you can, it was near Strasburg, where this was, Woodstock and Strasburg, pretty close together. And you see Western Auto stores. So these bikes were made for Western Auto. Let me kind of get this thing in focus. Let me just kind of go around. And then here, you can see the grips. Don't quite match, but I think that they are original to the bike. And then, let's see and get the lighting because there we go. So you can see the speedometer. So you can see the checker flag that very closely resembles Chevrolet's checker flag, like on their super sport cars back in the 60s. And you can see the RPM. It's the idea. It kind of looks like the idea looks like a car tack. That was all by design. It's been 344 kid miles. I'm not sure I'd want to go over 25 miles an hour on this, even if it was downhill. But anyway, that was one of the accessories. Let me draw back because the light's not that great, but you can see. And I think this bike, other than the rear tire, and you can see, we'll go back here. So you can see, like right here, and I can tell that tire is like, that's, I don't know who made it, but I know that's not the original tire. But I think the front tire is original. So, and you have the cool reflector on the back. Just look at that stance. Okay.
Okay. It's 1968. Ready, set, go. And there it is. The first Krate bicycles, the first Krate in the Sting-Ray line. And they are really serious now. So you can see a lot of things are going on. The first thing that probably catches your eye is the small front wheel. That's a 16-inch wheel, again, to mimic the choppers from, well, it's still going strong, and we're into the 68, so that's still a thing. Depending upon who you talk to, some say the 5-spoke sprocket, and it's designed to look like a Krager mag wheel, and that was on purpose, of course. Some people say it didn't hit till 69, but this bike that we're looking at they claim it is an original numbers matching bike, so I'll leave it up to you. The other thing is, of course, 5-speed. The rear, if you look closely, the sissy bar is now suspended. Essentially, it has two little coil springs opposing. Was an idea that it was kind of like motorcycles did back in the day with what's called a plunger frame, where the axle moved up and down to kind of have some suspension, kind of turn a hardtail into somewhat not a hardtail. Well, in this case, what they did is just had the look. And the seat was there was actually springs in there. And you can tell a 68 only, this is the first year where there was no front fender, and that was like a really aggressive look, they thought. So there's that, man. That's pretty cool. And then in the next picture, you can see the seat, the stripe down the seat, racing stripe with the Schwinn S. That's also new. Pictured, and just all these cues, man, they're just making this thing. This is where they really take off from here. Now, it's interesting, the Krate, spelled with a K, of course, kind of play on words, was actually lifted from a West Coast dragster rail. Some people called it a digger back then. I don't know if it was Top Fuel, whatever it was, but whatever they lifted it from, I guess the guy had no problem because, I guess nobody owns the word Krate. But there were 3 models. There was an orange Krate, which is the most popular we're looking at, and I think they sold the most of. Then the apple Krate, which was red, and then they had the lemon peeler, which of course was lemon, and that was the first 3 bold colors and in the new Krate line for 1968. So, man, we are off and running, and they are leaving the competition in the dust. And as a matter of fact, so much so that I'll show you an ad that was promoting in 68 this bike, and it's just about the coolest thing ever. So I'm pretty sure that this is
the first ad directly, obviously marketed at kids, and to really debut the Krate series. And you see that they're debuting, it's the orange Krate, and it's on a drag strip. You can see the slingshot dragster in the background, and the angle, it looks like the kid's winning. I mean, if you look at that picture, there's just so much to the story. He's got a smile on his face. He's kind of like getting it, you know, his posture. There's just so much that speaks to the era at that time. And man, kids just like went crazy over it. Just crazy. They definitely hit whoever thought of that, definitely, this particular shot, definitely hit it out of the park. And you can see there was some of their 10 speeds like in the lower part, and then a unicycle, of all things, in the right lower hand corner. But take a look at the price. Now, this is the Krate with the 5-speed, of course, the drum brake, just like you see it in the picture. No front fender. Remember, it's 68. And it's $86.95 is the suggested retail. So the question is really to everybody out there, so what is that in today's money? Well, I did a little computation, and it is $780 and like 10 cents, give or take, in 2024 money. So now, I mean, you could just see, I mean, that is not a cheap bicycle by any means at all. And of course, again, Schwinn being a premium bike maker, it was quality, but man, that is a lot of money, especially if you had more than a couple of kids, you know, similar in age. I mean, man, that's like a car payment or something, you know, today, or more than that. But anyway, I believe, it's my understanding, this is the ad that they used to launch the Krate, and they hit it out of the park, man. Awesome. So in 69 through 70, the front fenders were standard, and they added a couple of colors. They had a white and the green, and then I think they even had a gray, the gray Ghost. I believe I have that right. But the interesting thing is, man, those bikes were not inexpensive, as I said again, and then by 70, depending upon how you had it optioned, they were $129 and change in 1970s money. So, man, they are actually getting more expensive. They're getting cooler, but they're getting more expensive. And in the 3 years, so 68, 69, to 70, so in 3 years of introducing the Krate, just those 3 years, they sold over 1 million of those things, not including all the accessories and everything else that they sold. So just incredible, actually. So come 74, which I'll focus on in a minute, you might laugh at, they're going to actually have to take something off the bike, and you might laugh at why. If you see the stick shift there, by 74, that was gone. And it's kind of, well, I think it's kind of funny, but so the stick shift was spelled S-T-I-K, you know, again, a play on words, you know, for Schwinn, that, you know, basically just, you know, cool spelling. So this is what happened. A lot of kids had, let's just call them accidents, where they'd get their twig and berries caught up on the shifter if they slid forward, or the shifter was like, or maybe, I don't know, something else. But it's kind of funny. And as a kid, a good friend of mine had one of these, and I actually saw it happen more than a couple of times. So it makes me kind of laugh. But yeah, so the Consumer Products Safety Division made Schwinn discontinue the stick shifter in 74. It could no longer be like that. I think they went to either a twist shifter up on the handlebars, or they might have done away with it altogether, the 5-speed. Anyway, just kind of a humorous note. And I'm actually kind of surprised that, you know, they didn't step in with the crazy handlebars, the butterfly handlebars, and the slick tire and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, so just a little history for you.
All right, so as you can imagine, Schwinn is just selling these bikes like hotcakes, and everybody wants a piece of the pie. So other bike manufacturers, and I'm going to show you them in just a few minutes, and companies separate from Schwinn are devising products, most of which are useless, but look cool. The first one comes to mind, I'll show you a picture of. There was a company called California Front End, or the company was called California, something like that, I'll show you. Showing this really long front end with like no spring on it, nothing like that, like just like a chopper, late 60s chopper, and a drag chute, the California drag chute. There was actually a couple of those things, a couple of manufacturers, and if I remember correctly, there was a lever on the frame, a cable, it had a spring, just like a chute on a drag car, and you bolted it, or, you know, I don't know, bolted it, put it on your sissy bar. Then there was a company called Wham-O. Wham-O made all kinds of toys for kids, big kids, by the way, and Wham-O made a wheelie bar that bolted like on the back here, and I'll show you the picture. And you bolted on, and I guess if you were too uncoordinated and you couldn't, man, if you can't pull a wheelie on one of these, I don't know, something's wrong with you. But you know, some kids, I don't know, maybe they need a little help. But Wham-O made this wheelie bar, and you just kind of like lean back, and it was set up so you could adjust it and you could just ride. And it had essentially roller skate wheels on it. So anyway, now we're going to get into, so there was all kinds of that stuff, the accessory market from these small niche companies, and they were selling, man. I mean, and it was, you know, kids would buy it with their lawnmower money, essentially, or what, or their lunch money, whatever. I'm going to show you what all the other manufacturers are doing, the other bike manufacturers during, you know, from 68 on, to get a piece of that kid pie money. And just like muscle cars, I mean, they got some of the stuff, I don't know how they were able to even sell them. I guess, you know, back then, nobody really cared. But I'm going to show you some bikes with some stuff that it just might blow your mind. Really innovative stuff, all like car culture, drag race inspired. So stick with me, and I'm going to show you that right now. We're going to walk through it.
All right, check this thing out. Like the half circle on the handlebars and the crazy front forks. A wheel. There you go, full steering wheel on that one. And that, look at that kid. He's got getting it with the full steering wheel. The Mongoose funny car on that, Hot Wheels edition. Check that out. That's got the crazy handlebars. Look at that. Chopper style from Murray. Okay, now they're like getting right to Harley-Davidson choppers. Another Murray, look at that. Looks like a tack. Check out the shifter. And this bike actually is crazy. This bike, you see the spring on the frame? The rear wheels steered as well as the front. There's another Murray, I think, chopper. Pretty cool. And then the Eliminator Mark II, and it says supercharged for sales. I dig that big time. And the crazy chain guard on that thing and the padded sissy bar. Easy Riders. Now this had to be, and by AMF, by the way, so this had to be at least in 69 or 70 because paying tribute to, you know, Harley-Davidson Easy Riders movie. And then the Sears, look at that, the first bike with a frame like a drag racer. And look at the Top Fuel car at that time, sitting in the back. In the background, you can see the crazy, what I call the butterfly handlebars. And then look at this. This is really a shadow of things to come. The BMX, this was in 69 with the Hurst Olds in the background, the Hurst Hustler. I'm not sure who made the bike, but you see it's in 69, and that's a foretelling of things to come. And probably my favorite one of all is the kids at the country store getting a RC Cola and a moon pie to fuel up for the afternoon ride around the country. That's probably the coolest picture of all, at least to me, because that's exactly what we did.
All right, y'all, so thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. A lot of history, a lot of kid history with me, because I remember all this, or most of it anyway. It was just such a great time, man, to grow up and have the opportunity. Like, I never had one. I didn't have one of these bikes when I was growing up, but a very good friend of mine, he had got one at Christmas. It was the orange crate, all laid out, and I think that was in 68 or 69, one of the two. And it must have been 69 because it had the front fender on it. And it was just really a great time, and to all the tie-in with car culture and the obvious influence of choppers. But I hope y'all enjoyed it, man. It was a lot of fun making. I have fun making all of my videos. Please like, subscribe, ring the bell, and all those things. See ya.